And we're back with the Costello Coaching Podcast. I am Tommy Costello, coming at you solo here with another style of a Q&A. So we've collected a lot of questions actually from players, parents, and like I said on the last episode, I want to utilize this as a database for people to just go to as a resource of me having questions answered for them. A lot of times there's so many different thoughts that you have as a player. There's so many different thoughts that you could have as a parent as you're trying to advise your child. And what I want to do is I want to be able to have this as a platform, as a resource for you to go back to and always utilize. So the first question that really popped off the piece of paper for me when I was looking at the list of questions was, how do you know you're making progress with training mental toughness? And this is a topic that I hear about all the time, whether they're college players, pro players, youth players. You know, everyone is really intrigued by this concept of mental toughness or preparedness on the mental side. And, you know, how do we deal with so much frustration that the game brings us? And I think the truth is we don't give ourselves a large enough time horizon to say how much we're progressing at this. And what I mean by that is a lot of times we feel like with one conversation or one comment or one coaching cue that we should make this drastic shift in the way that we mentally approach something. And so I was actually having a conversation with a parent of a youth athlete. And I've known this family for about 6-7 months. And they originally started talking to me because they really wanted help with their son and the way that he was looking at the game. And this type of player works his tail off, gifted at the game, but the kind of kid that will get super down on himself if he strikes out, or get super down on himself if he boots a ball, and he'll take it into the next play. And so as a parent or as a coach, a lot of times it's easy to be super frustrated with that player. And it's really easy to say, man, I tell him all the time. It's like, well, maybe you've been having this conversation with him for like the last month. And if we can compare it to the physical side of the game, you wouldn't expect someone to make a 15-mile-an-hour increase in their throwing velocity in a month. But that's the same rate of improvement that you're looking at when you're talking about the mental game. And so what I say is, hold yourself accountable to where can I be in 24 months with the way that I'm looking at this. You know, if I'm a player that constantly says, and I hear this all the time, I suck. Man, I suck. I just struck out, or I can't barrel anything. And I'm really bad at these negative conversations that I have with myself. Well, just limit those conversations to not saying anything at all. So if things don't go right, rather than trying to make the jump from negative to positive, or being down on yourself and being up on your ability and yourself, just go to neutral and move and shift the needle back to neutral. And if you're the parent coaching the player, have a little bit more patience with where they're at in their journey and say, okay, he's 14 years old. He's going through a lot of changes. He's going through puberty. He's got this and this and this on his plate. Let's still hold him accountable to not throwing his helmet, not getting upset, not using swearing language when he's underperforming. But let's just move the needle to saying nothing at all, not throwing the helmet, putting the batting gloves back in the helmet, and just going out and playing. Now, if he's internally feeling down on himself, that's okay. Like, let him be okay with that and see if he can make those changes over the next 6, 7, 8 months. And if it takes more, 18 months, 36 months, that's okay. But it's the second you beat someone down for it for not making the shift right away, that's when you're in trouble. So, you know, how do you train mental toughness, and what does that look like? And how do you make progress with it? Well, really give yourself a large piece of time in order to make that shift. And that's the biggest thing that I want to hone in. Give yourself more time than you think you need. Okay. Question number 2. How is technology going to help me develop as a player? Okay, this one is, that's a general way of stating it. Having pro guys come back into the building throughout the offseason, a big thing is how do they interpret really all the data points that they've been provided at the pro level. And for those that maybe don't understand what that looks like, these players are given hundreds of data points, whether it's spin on their fastball or spin on their breaking ball. There's a ton of information that they've been provided, and a lot of them kind of can get confused with how to utilize it. What does this mean? What does that mean? And look, I'm in the space. I'm in development. I work with a lot of players. I'm learning something new all the time. When we get a data analyst, for example, last week went down to Pepperdine, hosted a few of my pro pitchers to go throw bullpens. Super nice of them. They brought out their data analyst. They had their TrackMan unit, which is a device that tracks all the pitching metrics. We threw the bullpen, and we were taking a live look at the iPad. And look, I do my homework on this stuff, but I was learning things from the data analyst that I had never heard before. The biggest thing here, if I could help you with, is just get really specific on what's going to directly help your performance. If you're spending a lot of time confused about what the data is doing, then just shake it and don't worry about it until you're educated on what those things mean. What I want you to do is I want you to get a little bit more specific with what can translate to improving your performance. So, for example, we had a left-handed pitcher. He had a release height of 6'4", 6'5" last year, big, tall lefty, come way over the top and pull down. And he would have a lot of anterior shoulder pain, which just means a lot of shoulder pain on the front side of the shoulder. And when he would go to throw, he would kind of come up out of his legs and then pull his arm way over. And so over the past few weeks working with him, we ended up changing what's called his release height. So how high off the ground his hand is from the ground when he releases the ball. So being 6'4", 6'5" last year, this year, we want to make that transition for him to be a little bit lower so that he isn't putting so much pressure on his shoulder. So we didn't do this by saying, hey, throw sidearm. We did this by adjusting some of his shoulder angles, some of his hips, the way he was sequencing his delivery. And then we went and got on the TrackMan unit, and we were like, wow, you're at a 5'9" release height now. So we lowered that by a significant amount, 8, 9 inches. And then his extension was measured at 1.5 feet more of extension. So meaning that he was getting 1.5 feet closer to home plate. So there was probably 25, 30 different data points we could look at, but we used that entire session to just track those 2 data points, because those are the 2 data points that were most connected with him getting more on the hitter and a safer position to release the ball for his arm health. So that is like the way that we utilize some crazy advanced technology, but oversimplified it to the points that we were specifically working on. Rather than trying to attack 20 different data points at once, we just use the 1 data point or the 2 data points that were most connected with improving his performance, and we stayed focused on those. So long story short, for guys that are given a lot of information, really decipher and discern on what do I need to improve most in my game, and then I'm going to go work with those pieces of information, and that's the 2 or 3 or 1 or 2 data points that I'm going to be focused on as I'm making these adjustments in either my throw or my swing or whatever it is. So really, when it comes to utilizing all the information, boil it down to the 1 or 2 things that are most connected with improving your performance, and then forget everything else. And then once you master those things, you can find another piece of data that will help you improve your performance. I have to tell myself that all the time when it comes to coaching athletes and helping different people. I have to get really connected with what is the truth here on what is going to make that progress happen and what is specifically going to do that for them. This question, pretty kind of deep, a little bit more personal, comes from a player that I've actually worked with for a long time. And this one just showed up in the gym. He said, why do you coach, and what is your favorite piece of coaching? Well, I never intended on becoming a baseball coach. I never really wanted that. I always thought I'd be, running some sort of more traditional business, or playing professional baseball. Like I never knew what anything was going to look like. But what ended up happening was I went through a really big discernment on what I wanted my life to look like. And so when I work with players, I really want them to get in touch with a vision of how they want their life to look. and how they want it to feel and how they want to live through this life experience, and then put all your work towards that. And so once I started, coaching that vision, I was actually coaching myself. And so what I've done is, I think to this point in my life, I've been alive 27 plus years. And what I've enjoyed most in my life is baseball as a sport, but really being around young guys that are ambitious and want to achieve at a very, very high level. And I want to too. And I'm super motivated to do that. And being able to show up and call this work is kind of funny to me, because it's the best experience possible. It's like the ideal life for me. I get to be connected with a sport that I love, with human beings that are going after their biggest dreams and aspirations, and I can be there to support them. So a lot of times, like, I always envision coaching as a top-down experience, meaning that the coach has the answers and the player is there to say yes, sir, and do it. And I think the role that I've taken with the guys that I work with is a little less of a top-down experience and more of a I'm with you on this level experience. I think as I continue to grow in my business and this coaching business, the vision for me is more so to almost hire professionals that are really good at the techniques, and for me to be just on the ground training with the players and being a source of knowledge and a resource for them to be supportive. A lot of times I didn't feel extremely supported in the way that I wanted to be supported as a player. And not a lot of people held space for me to maybe not be vulnerable and explain and be with me as I was trying to, really reach my potential. I didn't have anyone that was really there for me at that level. They were there for me in the terms of, hey, follow this training program. They were there for me in, why don't you read this book, or why don't you do this workout, or why don't you try this pitching mechanic? But on the human level, helping me through that human experience of understanding frustration, understanding anxiety, understanding, what to do with these things, and knowing that I wasn't wrong for feeling those things. So being more so a person that holds that space for the athlete is what I envision my role, less of a coach and more of maybe a mentor or a friend that knows the plan that they need. Understanding where they're at and where they want to go, and then the steps that are going to happen in between that journey is my favorite piece of coaching. Being there to explain the process, being there to identify and be honest to the athlete and let them be vulnerable for they can explain to me where they think they're at. That's my favorite piece, is just having that conversation. And then the fun part is the daily work. Those conversations kind of happen maybe once every 90 days or once every 6 months, and you're just re-identifying where they're at and where they want to go. And, everyone's journey is so different. So some guys, are in high school and they're going to get drafted out of high school. They're going to get millions of dollars, and then they're going to get millions of dollars. And they are now going through a whole different experience. Like, all right, well, what do I do with this money? What do I do with this pressure? What do I do with this opportunity? Some guys are, college players that are seniors in college that are just praying for an opportunity to go play pro baseball. And how do I deal with that kind of pressure? And so and everyone can have a plan. Everyone can have their own plan of what they need in order to achieve it. It's just everyone's in their own situation. And so with top-down coaching, what happens a lot of times is, everyone's delivered the same plan. And that was my challenge. It was hard to find people that were connected with where I was actually at. And it's okay to be wherever you're at. You're where you're supposed to be. And it's okay to have the biggest goals in the world and go after those goals, because if you fall short of them, it doesn't matter. You can keep trying and keep going. And it's okay to fail. It's okay to fall short, because that's really, really where you need to be going. That's where you need to be striving. And at the end of the day, like, you can just pick up and move forward. And if you have that mentality, nothing to lose mentality, you will achieve a lot more than you probably even believe you can. And so being that person that can support the athlete at the deepest level, that's why I do this. And so setting up a culture, setting up an environment where players can participate in that, and then providing really in-depth plans to these athletes is is our biggest mission, to help expedite the process in which to achieve their goals. You know, if you can get specific and work super hard, your goals can be achieved much faster. And that's really, really what we're doing. So those are the three questions that I highlighted today. Reviewed some mental toughness, reviewed integrating with some tech and some data points, and then a little bit about myself on why I enjoy coaching and what my favorite piece of coaching is. So hopefully you found this helpful, and shoot me a text if you have my phone number, DM us on social media if you have any questions that you want to submit, and we'll be here on a weekly pace to answer your questions and help support you in any way possible.